Good morning to those of you who celebrate the occasion. I don't necessarily do that, but some of you do. Good morning. It's been weird to be back at work after a week of vacation. I'll have to tell you, this year has been different for me. Normally, I don't notice the time change going back to standard time at all because I go to work every day at 4 p.m. where I live, and then I don't observe any sunsets ever, so like if I want to see a sunset, I have to do it on a day off. Well, I spent the first week after the switch to standard time, being alive when the sun is up way too early and then setting way too soon. I decided never again to take vacation right after the time change. It was brutal. Didn't like experiencing the shorter days there. Today's show is about Donald Trump. I don't know if you saw him during the game yesterday. He wants the Commanders to name the new stadium in D.C. after him because I guess he was fairly instrumental in getting all the permits pulled and getting all that done right. I don't know if you saw him during the game yesterday. They had him up in the broadcast booth briefly in the third quarter during the Lions and Commanders game, I guess. And I tried to enjoy it real hard, but it was pretty stilted. Seems like they didn't have a lot of pre-planned dialogue. And there's things that a president could say about football, like about how, the President Kennedy established the physical fitness tests for children. Or how Theodore Roosevelt thought that football was so important because it gave men practical training for the military, discipline, working in units, having assigned roles, violence. That when football was facing extinction in the early 20th century, Theodore Roosevelt and Walter Camp formed the NCAA and reformed the rules of football so it was much less a savage game. So it's like presidents have been heavily involved in football. I think Nixon played. Ford played for Michigan. So I mean, there's plenty to talk about there. They mentioned briefly that Trump played tight end for the New York Military Academy, which I thought was only faintly interesting. But they could have talked about some of that stuff, and it might have been good. Unfortunately, they, because of the government shutdown, which I'll talk about here in a little bit, they couldn't do the big salute to service thing that they normally do, which is their way of pandering to the conservatives in the NFL. They do so much pandering for Pride Month and all this other stuff. They couldn't do the normal conservative pandering to the military. But Donald Trump was there. He was the first president to attend a regular season football game since, I think, Carter in 1978. What was really cool, and it was really sad to see Americans doing this. And I get that Donald Trump is divisive, and as your president, it is your right as an American to hate his guts. In fact, I generally encourage that you dislike the president, whoever it is, just because, that's part of tradition of being American is you hate your authority. But something they did in lieu of having the traditional salute to service, pomp and circumstance, whatever it is the president himself swore in a bunch of young people, enlisted them into the armed services in what should have been a truly amazing and touching moment. Of course, you had all the Northern Virginians and Marylanders out there who are typically blue, being very rude and booing. And it's like, this moment's not about the president. The president's there, but this is a swearing in. This is people turning over their lives in service to their country. And there's something sacred about it. It's something awe-inspiring in seeing someone taking an oath to uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States against its enemies, foreign and domestic, and all the people there too. All the people on the field getting sworn in were promising to give their lives to defend the safety of all those spectators who were booing. So I thought that was very classless. It's about what you can expect from, I could say Redskins fans or just residents of Fairfax County and Georgetown and that whole area up there. But there was one play that was pretty cool. Hopefully I don't get in trouble for showing it, but here it is. If Amon-Ra St. Brown catching a touchdown pass from Jared Goff, goes in there, points to the president, does 47's dance. And a few moments later, of course, it all got much worse because typical leftist violence, just went up and punched him. There's no room for pleasant talk or debate when it comes to that side. They see a conservatism happening before their eyes, and they just punch. Very sad, but good for the Lions because they totally whipped the shit out of that team. Historically, I do hate the Redskins very much. They're the arch rivals of the Dallas Cowboys. But yes, he did the the president's kind of terrible dance, and then a few moments later, while walking around, one of the defensive players just fucking gives him a haymaker, which is stupid because he's also wearing a helmet. But that guy got ejected, and the Redskins, the Commanders, whatever, really needed all of their players, so they did not have that. But I wanted to talk about the president naming a new stadium after him. And now it's all over ESPN, that this could actually happen because he doesn't want to pay for it either. He doesn't want to pay for the naming rights, which is, I think, a little bit more of a traditional American thing to do, to pay for those naming rights. But he wants it to be bestowed upon him graciously. There's a couple problems with that. First of all, you have to remember that FedEx Field, where the Redskins used to play, FedEx was pulling out their funding for that NFL team, their financial support for the stadium, because of the perceived ethnic slur that was Redskins, which of course it was not an ethnic slur. It was the name that the Native Americans gave to themselves. Source, Smithsonian Institute, for any of those of you who doubt me. And of course, their logo was of John Two Guns White Calf, I believe, who was the chief of the Blackfeet tribe. It is literally a portrait of him, so it is not a derogatory caricature like you could say Chief Wahoo was for the Indians or whatever. It's literally a picture of a guy who was a leader for the real Native Americans. And we said, that's racist. Having a picture of a Native American is racist. And we also said that although all 31 other NFL teams name their team after something tough or aspirational, like, the ethos of the West embodied in the Cowboys, or the Giants of football, or the Saints of football, or whatever. The Rams, they give them all these cool names. Or Paul Brown, one of the greatest coaches in history, has a team named after him, the Browns. Okay. All these 31 other teams name their team after stuff they aspired to be or wanted to be known for. But there's one team that is just randomly racist, I guess. Yeah, we're not supposed to be honoring the legacy of America by naming a team after the first Americans, who are the Native Americans. That's whatever. The chief Redskin there, John Two Guns White Calf, went wherever the Land O'Lakes Native American went. But we got to discuss what's really going on here. Is he going to get the stadium named after him? Is that a good idea? You got to know something about Trump, and many people do not, which is the theme of today's episode, is that Trump has a sense of humor. And not only that, but Trump has really refined his tactics for how to deal with the media since his first term back in 2016. You got to remember, back then, media was all over him. I actually recovered a Facebook post of mine. I don't know if I have it in today's mix, but it was the day after he was inaugurated president, where the media was all on its heels saying, wow, we really underestimated the country, and we've got to give this president a chance to succeed because his success is really all of our success. This is what they were saying the day after he was inaugurated in 2016. And I took to Facebook, as was the preference of those times. And I said, yeah, how long until they start treating him like George W. Bush, like he's a big idiot? How long until they start criticizing everything he does? How long until they start talking about him being an illegitimate president? And of course, as with everything, I stand correct. I was proven correct on all of that. But in his second term, Trump has become much more masterful and mindful in how to deal with the media. Carolyn Lovett is a very good press secretary, in my opinion. She handles herself pretty well on most things. She didn't handle it well about the drones, like when they were asking her, like, "Hey, why didn't the president tell us all about the drones?" He said he was going to look into that. Now he says there really is nothing going on here. There's nothing about this bizarre cover-up we need to talk about anymore. He handles the media much better. He's got a much better press room. He has sort of mastered them, that they need to be respectful when they're in there. And then if they don't want to be respectful, they can leave. And, he's gone on 60 Minutes, and he managed to successfully sue them for editing various tapes. But to end my rambling, he handles the media very, very well. He knows that the media is a 24-hour cycle. And ever since he began to run for president back in like 2011, way back then, ever since he first it occurred to him to start doing that, Donald Trump has been the obsession of every news network. You cannot go 5 seconds without hearing his name. And it's reflected in the culture. You can't look on Instagram on any post, however political or apolitical, and not see some derogatory comment about Donald Trump. So the media is obsessed with him. People are obsessed with him. It's part of Trump derangement syndrome, is that Donald Trump is the most important person in so many people's lives. He's not the most important person in mine. I don't care about Donald Trump. Not really. But he knows there's a 24-hour news cycle that's obsessed with him. So what do you do when you have a 24-hour news cycle that's obsessed with you and is talking about every single thing that you do or say all the time? Well, what Donald Trump does is, to successfully manage that, is that he gives them more than they can handle in 24 hours. He's got a big domestic agenda, which is part of the reason why he was elected overwhelmingly. And so in order to better handle the media, he frequently tells people that he's going to do things, not to lie to them, but so that the news day can waste an entire news day talking about this one stupid thing, instead of whatever it is, the business he's actually getting done that day. And you know what? I enjoyed the first 100 days of his administration. I've been a little black-pilled since then. I didn't like Doge ending and all that. But I just wanted to cover briefly with you some of the other things that Donald Trump, from the start of his second administration, has said that he would do in order to get the media to chase its own tail for 24 hours, to essentially throw them off of his scent. Like a pack of dogs, he will throw them a sausage so that they will leave him alone. Here are some of the other things that Donald Trump has said that he would do. Trump's still talking about buying Greenland. Here's where that's headed. This is from the Politico. So Donald Trump at one point said, "We are going to acquire Greenland. We will either buy it or negotiate for them to become a U.S. territory, or we'll just invade Greenland." And like the news took that seriously. And they literally sent news crews up to Greenland to talk to them to see what they thought about it. And, there was some support there, but many people were like, what we really want is just to be rid of Denmark. We don't really want to be a part of anybody. It would be nice if we had nobody pulling our strings, which you have to admire as an American, the idea that you don't have a big government far away pulling your strings. That's what it's all about. So he, just as a reminder, he did tell everyone that he was going to acquire Greenland. If you check, that did not happen. We did not acquire Greenland, but he did make a big stir in the news about it. And he got lots of people in the news to worry about Greenland rather than other things. You guys remember when he claims that Canada is considering an offer of the Golden Dome missile defense system in exchange for becoming the 51st state? You could see here literally Prime Minister Carney, I believe that's his name, like literally balking as Trump's like, well, if you were our 51st state, you could have it for free. How many days in the news cycle did everyone chase the idea that Donald Trump was trying to bring in a foreign sovereign nation to be of the 51st state? How long did they waste talking about whether or not it was possible? How angry did Canadians get, thinking you'll never get me, Donald Trump, and they're like pouring out Kentucky bourbon like out of some kind of protest or something? literally wasting their own bourbon that they already paid for. I hope they bought it just for the TikTok videos. But them angrily saying that they'll never be a part of us. Never mind that country's slowly becoming India, one person at a time, millions of people happening all the time. But how long did the media chase their tail talking about whether or not Canada would become our 51st state? Excellently done. Well played, Trump. You got the media to worry about something else. You guys remember when very early on, he said that we're going to retake the Panama Canal. He was talking about that around the time. I think he brought it up because he knew Jimmy Carter was near his deathbed. Jimmy Carter's the guy that turned the Panama Canal over to the nation of Panama. It was owned by the United States. We built it. It's a major logistics piece of infrastructure that links the Atlantic to the Pacific. And the Chinese have been operating it, and perhaps somewhat unfairly down there. So he knows Jimmy Carter is about to die. He knows Jimmy Carter's about to dominate the news cycle. And one of Jimmy Carter's so-called accomplishments was getting rid of the Panama Canal. So what does he do? When he knows that's about to happen, he knows Jimmy Carter's about to give up the ghost, he starts talking about how he's going to reverse that decision. He's going to retake the Panama Canal, or something very powerful will happen. Here's CNN. Again, chasing the stick that he threw for them to go chase after for a day or 2 days or a week or a month, with CNN wondering what's going to happen. Are we going to be going to war with Panama? Well, what's going to take place down there? And then this one sort of ever present, always going on all the time. If you got an A in civics class or a government class, then you know that President Trump cannot run for a third term. Lately, what I've been seeing is that people have been talking like, oh my God, what if he runs for vice president? And then the next president just steps down and he's president again. You cannot run for vice president if you're not eligible for the position of president, meaning if you're not born in this country, if you're not 35, if you're not all these other things that you have to be president. And yet the news cycle and the talking heads will eat this up for a day or 2 days or 3 days or whatever. Will he run for a third term? It says that a president can't be president 3 times, but that's only consecutively. So since I'm doing it non-consecutively, he just stirs them up and people get afraid. I literally see people in the comments who talk about, well, when Donald Trump refuses to leave the White House, and it will happen, will the military choose to uphold his dictatorship, or will they protect the American people? What's going to happen? And I'm just like, stay scared, dude. Stay tuned to CNN. Do you realize if Donald Trump refuses to leave the White House on the inauguration day of the next president, it won't fucking matter? Because over at the Capitol, there'll be some guy being sworn in as president. And then at that point, he's the president. It doesn't matter if Donald Trump's still in the White House. At that point, he transitions to guest, right? And then if he still refuses to leave, the White House staff will politely ask him to leave and give him a nice ride home to wherever that is, So all these people who are so afraid of it, it's because they don't understand. They don't understand what it's like to be played. And now they're playing themselves. And the media likes to stoke this fear, of course, because it gets you to watch all those Pfizer commercials. You guys remember this? I didn't remember this one. I had to do a little bit of research for this. Donald Trump is considering selling Puerto Rico following Hurricane Maria, says the former acting Homeland Security chief. Right. Do you think we could get a lot of money for Puerto Rico as it stands? And wouldn't the people of Puerto Rico, as a territory, they do have a congressional delegate. They don't get to vote, but the Puerto Rican people and the Puerto Rican government have a thing to say about that. We can't merely sell them like they're a car on our front lawn and it has hail damage. So we're just gonna liquidate it. But Trump says these things, or he disseminates it through people who are now former, clearly people who are disgraced from his circle are now saying, he was going to sell Puerto Rico. And here's the thing. If you're going to sell Puerto Rico, if you really wanted to sell it to say, help pay down our massive national debt and to give many Puerto Ricans the independence that many of them want, and we should give them, wouldn't we want to sell Puerto Rico when it's nice, not when it's hurricane damaged? Trump's a real estate guy. He knows how to get a good deal out of real estate. And he's not just going to give Puerto Rico away at rock bottom prices after it depreciates after a storm. And who would want to buy Puerto Rico? Puerto Rico doesn't have the money to buy itself. I guess we're selling it to Denmark or Greenland. I bet Greenland would like someone else to boss around. That way, whatever happens to them from Denmark, they could just take it out on Puerto Rico. And then this. Do you guys remember when Trump suggested nuking hurricanes to stop them from hitting the U.S.? Do you think that was ever serious? No, of course not. What kind of a madman would say, let's just unleash radiation and dump it in a big area and have the wind blow it all around? Like, Donald Trump's not an idiot. He knows how nukes work. But by saying this, by saying it with an absolute straight face, why don't we nuke them? The media will go insane. He knows that's going to tee off the environmentalists, the anti-nuclear people, the people that care about climate change and the weather the most, by saying we should nuke the weather. I mean, it's one of the most awesome and most base things since Nelson Muntz said nuke the whales in The Simpsons. And we obviously have not talked about this ever again. We have not nuked a single hurricane. We have had some hurricanes, not as many when Trump's president, I'll notice. Perhaps they're afraid of the nukes. Perhaps it's because the conservatives are now running HARP, which is the Atmospheric Advanced Research Projects Agency or whatever, that controls the weather. But he says these things and then it makes the news crazy. It makes the news crazy. And an audience that is not critically thinking or smart enough to question what it is that's being reported or what they're hearing or satire, they think that Trump's being serious. When I was in 11th grade, and this was way too late, but I was forced to read a book in 11th grade English. I'm trying to remember what it was called. It was a book by Jonathan Swift, or it was a short story, or it was a letter to the editor. But it was called like Common Sense or a Good Solution or whatever. And it was about the problems facing England with the poor and the homeless. And Jonathan Swift writes in absolute straight-faced, he says, what we should do is we should eat them. And we can gather them up and, it puts them out of their misery, and it solves the hunger crisis because we'll suddenly have an abundance of healthy proteins to eat. And I think he even throws in a recipe there then for like hobo stew. And I'm reading this in 11th grade when I'm stupid and a child. And I'm like, oh my God, this man's advocating cannibalism. What kind of nonsense is this? And like, I raise holy hell. And I'm like, why are you making me read this in high school? And the teacher's like, you ever heard a little thing called satire? And I'm just like, literally, no, I'm in English class. What is satire? But people that didn't get an A in 11th grade English and who don't know what satire is, first of all, they get mad at the Babylon Bee. But they're also routinely incensed by Donald Trump because they don't have a sense of humor. They're just mad that he's president. So nothing he says can ever be funny. In a world in which Donald Trump is president, nothing is funny. Nothing, you can't be happy about anything. But then he'll say something about nuking hurricanes and they'll birth a cow over it. And it's hilarious. I love watching these stupid, ignorant people getting upset about him saying things like that. But he wasn't done. You remember when he said that he would push $1,000 for on Trump accounts for babies? The program would have a tax-deferred investment accounts that could be cashed out at age 18. That's right. He'll pay you $1,000 to have a baby. And then the baby can have that $1,000 18 years after it's born. You guys heard anything more about that? Did you even hear this one? This is one of the smaller ones. But this idea that he's going to pay you to have a child, that plays into some really deep-seated stuff about migration and the ethnic character of the West. A lot of people on the right are worried that there's a great replacement going on, that there's a browning of America, that immigration from Mexico, India, Africa, from all parts of the world to here in the Western nations is all about a great replacement of Western civilization, values, race, and culture. And so the idea of Donald Trump is paying white people to have a baby would very much incense the left. We mentioned Hurricane Maria already, the third term thing, the babies. Trump was convicted of 34 criminal counts a year ago. Can he pardon himself? Well, was he convicted in federal court? Does he need to pardon himself? He's the president. He lives in the White House. He doesn't live in jail or anything. Is it stopping him from getting a job? These convictions? Does it matter? I mean, to me, if my enemies were going after me and managed to convict me of 34, basically made up charges, misdemeanors charged as felonies well after the statute of limitations had expired, just in a contrived attempt to get me. I would probably just keep those convictions because it's like, yeah, you got me, but what? I didn't go to prison. Trump not happy with Boeing over Air Force One. The idea that he's going to build his own Air Force One, or that he's going to get, you remember the airplane from Qatar? Do you remember that? That was like a whole big thing. Again, the news paints this as another Trump branded controversy, but it's also just stuff that Trump does to give them things to talk about to keep them busy. What about this? Trump is serious about his push to return the Redskins name, and he's getting support. Now, Chase had said something about that in the comments, that if he was going to do anything, it would be to restore the name of the Redskins. I have talked about this before on my sports show. So the problem with the Redskins getting their name back has nothing to do with Dan Snyder. He did not cave. He did not become woke. He did not cave to the woke Bob, as many like weird conservatives would phrase it. It had everything to do with FedEx threatening to pull their support, because FedEx just didn't want to be associated with the controversy, even though it's a stupid controversy. You might tell FedEx to just get a spine. But what really happened was the United States Patent Office has the right to just deem whatever it wants to as offensive and not renew any patents for it. So every year, a team or a company or anything has to renew its patents, right? That this remains a piece of copyrighted work. Well, the United States Patent Office under Joe Biden said, we are not renewing your patents. As you can imagine, for the NFL, merchandising, logos, jerseys, T-shirts, sports memorabilia, footballs, anything with that logo on it, with that Redskins logo, all of a sudden, anybody can make that. And in case in point, you go to, I think, trepublic.com and various other T-shirt companies, they're making Redskins merchandise because that logo, that mark, is now in the public domain. It means anybody can make it. So what is in a business where merchandising is the number one thing, why are you going to rename your team the Redskins if anybody can sell your T-shirts and your logo and make money off of it? All you're doing is making money for everybody but you, because if you're trying to any kind of premium price that you're gonna have for that, it's gonna be rock bottom prices, because you can literally take that logo and have it printed out at your local T-shirt shop and they'll do it for you because it's not copyrighted. As long as they're not sissies, they'll do it for you. So how realistic is them going back to their old name? Well, you could say, the U.S. Patent Office is an executive agency of the executive branch under Donald Trump, and he could give them an order to restore the patent rights of their Washington Redskins. That's good. That's not a long-term plan, though. He's only going to be president for 3 more years. The Washington Redskins spent 2 years as the Washington football team, right? Because that's how long it takes to pivot a big organization like that into adopting a new name. They went down a long road. They were the Washington football team. They didn't even have a name for 2 years before they became the Commanders, which is a name that I don't think a lot of people love. Are you going to pivot back away from that only for 3 years from now to have a Democrat come into presidency and say, I don't like that, I'm going to revoke your patents, and then they have to go through the whole thing again? Should they just maintain their patents for the Commanders as well? That way they could just throw the switch and oh yeah, I guess we're the Commanders again, just depending on who the president is, we're the Commanders or we're the Redskins. You can't run your business that way. It'll never come back, unfortunately. I hate the Redskins because I'm a Cowboys fan, but I have Redskins memorabilia just because it reminds me of growing up in Virginia, and it reminds me of a time before America was a bunch of pussies, and before we let stupid people rattle us into making stupid decisions. Because I just told you all about the Redskins name and why it was what it was and why it wasn't offensive. But you can be offended anyway if you're dumb and you actually want to dishonor Native Americans, who by and large have engaged in petitions and polls to say that they're not offended by it and they want us to bring it back. It won't happen. So Donald Trump won't have anything to say about that. And, he could talk about them changing their name back, but it won't happen for business reasons. NPR, with their pathetic little donate button at the top, Don't forget that Trump did actually create the Space Force. We thought that was a joke when he created the Space Force. In fact, we thought it was a joke to the point so much that Steve Carell had a Space Force Netflix comedy about being in the Space Force and fighting the Chinese on the moon and all this. But it actually happened. So I just wanted to remind you that for 1 out of every 10 insane things that Trump says that he'll do, he will actually do at least some of them. Before we get to the memes, there's 47 comments there. So perfect. Let me get to some of the comments in the chats. Thanks for joining us live this morning. Taliu, good morning. Always good to see you. Glad that you're here to fight with me again. Chase is here. Taliu says, shouldn't someone bring up the idea of naming a stadium after a person and not a person themselves? What do you mean by that? Bring up the idea of naming a stadium after a person and not the person themselves. Well, it used to be called RFK Stadium, and I think it was named after him after he died. So I think we had that idea. Are you saying that someone else should more graciously come up with the idea? Do you think that Trump should have broached this idea by saying, like, it should be named after me, and then he can whisper it in some guy's ear and like tell him to name it after me, and then he could be like, hey, Mr. President, why don't we name it after you? That way it's his idea. It's just not Trump's style. Plus, I don't think Trump really cares if the stadium's named after him. Now, Trump has really cared about the NFL for a long time. He tried to force his way into becoming an owner, and the owners stopped him from doing that. Happened with the USFL. He tried to force a merger. He owned the New Jersey Generals, and he wanted to be in the league. But I don't think that's his style. And I don't think that he really cares about having his name on the stadium, but he knows that because he had a lot to do with getting the stadium done, getting things done in Washington that needed to be done in order for it to happen. And because he's a real estate guy and because he gets things done, he just wants a building in Washington, D.C. to have his name on it. And he just knows that will cheese off the left forever. For as long as for that stadium to be in Washington or across the river, if it's over in Landover, Maryland, or wherever, I'm not exactly sure. I think it's in Washington, D.C. But for the building to say Trump on it, he knows that will cheese off the left, and so that's why he brings it up, just to make them mad, just so that they'll talk about it today and probably throughout maybe Wednesday before they move on to something else. Michael Hendricks says, "Remember that time that Epstein trafficked young girls to Epstein?" I do remember that. I remember that, and he probably trafficked them to other people as well. Here's the thing, though, is that Epstein is also an excellent distraction now, too. Do you realize that if anything ever comes up ever again with anything, that now we can use Epstein as a distraction? Doesn't mean it'll ever go anywhere. I read the book A Warning by Anonymous, a senior Trump administration official, and saw a lot of evidence about Trump's inability to be a normal adult. I'm sorry, is this breaking news? Does anyone think that Trump is a normal adult? I think what people love about Trump is that he's abnormal, right? He doesn't go up there pretending to be this person that he's not. We know what a weirdo is, and he's what you see is what you get. We felt like in 2016, Taliu, that every other politician was up there performing. I remember the debates between Chris Christie and Jeb Bush and all these guys, and all these fading stars of the GOP, and they were so contemptible because they were all just like different versions of each other, and none of them was authentic and real, with like the exception of maybe Ron Paul. And that's what we liked about Donald Trump, is that he was insane. In the end, you know what we liked about it? Just telling you from someone who liked him initially, is that, and I believe that this was somewhat insidious, but he knew what mattered to us, and then he told us that he would do it. Like there was no Republican in 2016 that says, immigration's a problem, let's build a wall between here and Mexico. But Donald Trump's like, why don't we build a wall? And we're all just like, yes, like, can that be done? And he says, oh yeah, we'll do it, and Mexico will pay for it. We're just like, why not? That's not a normal thing to say. He has masterfully handled through tariffs, many of the economic renegotiations in his second term. In like dealing with the border crisis with Mexico, it's the Mexican army that is now protecting the border. So in a way, that came true. He said that we would have higher border security, and Mexico would pay for it. but it was a totally insane thing to say in 2015 when he was running. But we liked that about him. His first cabinet ended up being a bunch of snakes. Yeah, he didn't take the time to weed those people out. The mere fact that somebody like John Bolton was in his cabinet, that he was taking all these Cheney and Bush acolytes and just trusting people. And he went on to say that. He went on, I believe it was Joe Rogan, to say that a lot of people in his first administration were people that he did not properly vet. Why do you think he's having better luck this time? It's because he spent 4 years deciding who his next team would be. He knew what the job was. He knew who he needed, and he found those people. Tom Homan, case in point. You don't have to believe in the mission of ICE. You can be against that, but you cannot argue that Tom Homan's not doing a great job. Well, where did he dig up Tom Homan? That guy was ready to go from day one. Why was that? Well, it's because he's done a better job. Just 1 second. Hopefully that sounds fine. Again, it pops and then it turns off. I don't know why. You have to let me know if it sounds okay. I didn't bump the mute, Deadleg. It just it gets destroyed. Let me know if you can hear it. Okay, back on now. Yeah, I didn't bump the mute, Deadleg. It just it blows up. I need a new Roadcaster. I need to buy a new one. So she says, my fear with Trump is how he represents the U.S. in creating animosity with countries like Canada. Canada being our best and longest ally. Okay, it's your opinion that Canada is our best and longest ally. Can you name for me some of the things that Canada brings to the table? I'll name one, to be fair. A lot of our electricity in states like Maine is actually manufactured in Canada and is insanely imported into the United States from Canada. What else? Can you tell me what's so important about Canada? We've got Canadians who watch the show, but what has Canada done for you? And I mean that very, very seriously, because we have this general idea that Canada's a great buddy of ours. Yes, we play hockey and baseball with them. Yes, there are the nice guy in the attic. But the truth is that their economic policies with us have often been exploitative and not fair ever since the North American Free Trade Agreement. And so what's wrong with agitating some Canadians? I don't get what the problem is with ruffling their feathers a little bit. If maybe they can stop treating us like a big brother they can mooch off of, then that's fine. I don't think Canadians are particularly mad at Americans, and if they are, so what? But they can be mad at Donald Trump if they want, and we can kid around with them and tell them that their prime minister is the governor of the 51st state, because whether you like it or not, Canada doesn't have the power or the prestige that the United States has, and they don't have the economy or the wealth of the people or the power that we have. Canada has been following our lead and, frankly, consuming our culture and our media and our goods since World War II. So I want to be friends with Canada, but I don't want to be played as chumps by our best friends. Here's the thing: is that sometimes it's your best friends who can play you as more chumps than anyone else. Like, do you think if Iran, Iraq, or Yemen, or Libya, or Lebanon, or even Mexico, do you think of any of these countries that we maybe don't have the best relationship with, if they had an unfair economic deal, do you think that would be permitted to stand? Absolutely not. We're going to be hardliners, all these countries. But suppose your best friend, your neighbor, Canada is very much like Kramer, where they come over to our apartment and drink our milk, but because they're our friends, we don't say anything. Has it occurred to you that because they're our friends, that they could be a little bit more exploitative than an enemy could? Just something to think about. I have a hard time respecting the Canadian militarily. There are like 7 people living there, and their military is pretty small, right? Well, do you want to insult the North Dakota National Guard? Because what you just said could apply to them too. But the president is not elected to cause fires that just distract the people from the real issues. Is he causing any fires, though? What fires has he caused? It's just reporting. Did he spend any money on Greenland? Did he fly a jet there? What fire got caused? And who says he's not elected to do that? I think the people that elected him might have elected him to do that. I kind of like the idea that he stirs up the status quo. There goes my mic again. We'll see if it pops out. Just randomly popping in and out. Canada is about 33 million people, the size of California. Yeah, there's something else we could do without. So it's tiny compared to us. I guess the UK is too as well. Hey, Felony, how's it going? I was actually afraid that Joe wouldn't leave after he lost. Well, because he can't find the way out. Not due to nefarious reasons, because he doesn't know where he's supposed to be, where to go. But Trump incited the riot. Tell you, if you actually believe this, then there's no talking to you. There's nothing that shows that he incited the riot. He encouraged people to protest peacefully. You know what's interesting about that is that it's all on Twitter. You can read Twitter. All of that stuff was documented. He did not tell anyone to do anything dangerous. He encouraged people who were dissatisfied with the results of a stolen election to protest, but not more dangerously than the assault on the 3rd precinct in Minnesota, which nothing happened about that. We had riots all across this country in 2020, and not one politician gave a damn. No one was accused of doing that. No, but nobody in Minneapolis stood any blame for any of that was going on. And he gets fucked either way, because if he had sent in the National Guard to quell that, they would have said, well, that's his private army. That's him declaring martial law. That's the military in the street establishing the Trump dictatorship, stopping people from protesting. He's not going to let people protest. He sent out the National Guard to stop a protest. That's a president stopping the First Amendment. Not to mention that it was Nancy Pelosi's job as in charge of Capitol security to call for that. And recently, she was accosted on the street for her role in enabling and abetting those people to do what they did on January 6th. Also, not a riot. People did get hurt. I understand that. I'm not saying that you should do anything with police officers, but they went inside and did what? They looked around, they went on a tour, and then they went home. Everybody was in bed by 9. That wasn't a riot. Okay, not only that, but how can you break into a building that you own? That's the government building. That's owned by the people. We can go in there whenever we want. And all we did was go in and have a look around. Yes, there was some messiness. And yes, those people who individually did those things need to pay for it, but they were not incited to do anything. The president told them to demonstrate peaceably. So if you honestly believe that he incited a riot, then I will never be able to reach you on anything, because that has all been well documented. And the only reason why it mattered at all and why Nancy Pelosi allowed it to happen was because she knew that his reaction to that, or him causing the riot, is everything that they needed to prevent him from running for president again. They knew that he was still a viable candidate. They knew that he had won the election in 2020. And they wanted to stop Trump from being able to run again. So they wanted to build up every single means that they could. They wanted to spend 4 years doing that. And in fact, that's what they did. That's how I know that that was their goal. And it was their entire goal to use that riot on January 6th to make him look bad, depended on him, to make him ineligible to run for president. It's the exact same play that they're doing right now with the government shutdown, which, by the way, has that ended yet? Does it not strike you that the government shutdown only goes until the election? They definitely get to the election and then they win. Well, I know what you're thinking. Well, what do the elections have to do with the federal shutdown? I hope you're thinking that. I hate to use personal anecdotes, but sometimes they reach people better than statistics. I was recently asked a very serious and important question. Somebody asked me, John, how are you doing with the government shutdown? And I said, I'm doing fine, thanks. I hope they never reopen. And they said, but you work for the state. Doesn't that mean you're not getting paid? I said, first of all, I'm a 911 dispatcher, as you well know, which means I work for the county. I don't work for the state. Okay, so the county is still functional. And some 911s, to be fair, are city. Some of them are even state functions. There's some state 911s. There's even federal 911 up in North Dakota. I know they have like 9 counties that are run by the Border Patrol, have their own 911. But she also said, you work for the state, don't you? Well, no, I do not work for the state, but as it so happens, the state in which I live is also not shut down. It's the federal government that's shut down. And like, she just like, so are you getting paid or not? Do you see that the common person is so woefully uninformed about the tenets of federalism that they don't understand the difference between local, city, county, state, federal government? It's all just the government to them. So when the government's not functioning or perceived to be dysfunctional, which never mind that really nothing was happening with the government being closed, any day the government takes a day off is a good day for me as far as I'm concerned, and I do not give a shit about SNAP benefits, as we've discussed openly on the show before. They thought that voters thought that by showing up to the polls last Tuesday that they could send a statement and get the government reopened. They thought that they were doing that by voting for Mondami in New York and Sponberger in Virginia. They thought they were making a difference in the state of the government shutdown. What went through their minds, I wonder, as they continue to hear some stories of the news being shut down the next day. And you see this on all sides. I saw it on Instagram. Somebody conservative, Patriot Account USA or something, was talking about how Mayor Mondami, was being shut down by Governor Kathy Hochul in New York on day one. Oh, all the stuff he promised, free buses, free housing, free food, free everything. Governor Hochul said, no, it's not going to happen. This is what happens when you promise free things, but you don't do the math. Think about that before you vote next time. And I'm just like reading this. And I'm like, so it's ostensibly like trying to rope in conservatives, or this is something conservatives should repost. I'm just like, why do they think the governor of New York is the boss of the mayor? Do we not understand federalism at all? But that's how woefully uninformed voters are. So that was the purpose of the shutdown. So just to relate it all back to J6, they like taking advantage of bad situations and using it to make the Republicans look bad. And they own the media, so they own the discourse on whether or not the J6 thing was actually a riot or whether or not the shutdown was actually caused and perpetuated by Republicans. They know that anything that looks bad, they can just pin to the Republican Party. And so if you actually believe that Trump sent some people out to do anything that would affect anything that was going on in Washington, never mind the fact that when his term was up, he left and didn't make a big fucking deal out of it. You're supposed to tell me that that was all part of an actual attempt to do anything. What was the point of the riot? It didn't do anything, didn't accomplish anything. And we've also learned that like something out of like 1 out of every 5 people at the riot was an FBI agent, stoking action, making it worse. The something that recently came out in the news, I would need to fact check this, but the pipe bomber was apparently a former Capitol Police officer who now works for the CIA. So there were people there who were making the situation worse, who worked for the federal government, who didn't like Donald Trump, deep state executive branch employees. And you say, well, that's not true. Well, there were FBI agents embedded in the group of people who were planning to kidnap the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. There were multiple FBI agents all embedded in that. So how many of them were stoking that on to some sort of fruition? So I could go all day with you about how the J6 thing was not encouraged, perpetuated, or anything to do with Donald Trump. Also, I find that your choice of quagmire to be an interesting word. That's something that was often associated with Nixon and Carter. I don't see our administration as being any more of a quagmire than those. That's a very myopic view of history. There are some administrations that were viewed as no drama, like Obama was known as no drama Obama. Guy was blowing up hospitals, Operation Fast and Furious. Everybody was making a big deal out of Iran-Contra with Reagan, but nobody cares that we were funneling automatic weapons to Mexican drug cartels in Operation Fast and Furious. So, Talio, you have a very short-sighted view of the world. I can tell you watch a lot of mainstream news, but you're not paying attention to a lot of what's going on. And in fairness, you have to dig very hard in that. But if you know about Iran-Contra, but you don't know about Attorney General Eric Holder and his role in basically giving guns to Mexican drug cartels, then you're just following the mainstream news media and their narrative, and you're not paying attention to everything that's going on. Tyler's here. So it's not big and beautiful and strong and pretty. Good morning to those guys. Good crew here today. Taliu continues to dog me. People get elected by these rich people. I'm not rich. Do you think I'm rich? Who go off and buy the politicians, do their bidding, and has never been more transparent to me in any way. Yes, but it has always been that way. So whoever it is that you loved in government, if you think that there was not big money pulling his strings, you are wrong about that. We have comedians for comedy. The president is supposed to be a stoic figure. Who says? Is that in the United States Code? He's supposed to be a stoic figure? Where is that in the law? Somebody we have confidence in leading our nation. Ironically, I have confidence. I want somebody with a sense of humor. The idea that you wanted Calvin Coolidge said that the American people want a solemn asshole for president. Calvin Coolidge said that. And Calvin Coolidge was a solemn asshole. He was well known as Silent Cal. He wouldn't talk to people. Well, there was no mass media in the area of Calvin Coolidge, right? Radio was starting at about that time. But every president has mastered the media of his time. Think about FDR and his fireside chats. He would talk to Americans who were afraid during World War II on the radio. Think about President Kennedy having the first televised speeches, his first televised debate versus Nixon. He mastered the art of television. Okay, Trump is a president for the social media era. He's the master of TikTok. He's the master of a guy who can dominate the media for 24 hours, and he knows that it quickly washes out. This is not a time where you need a president to make a long-lasting Gettysburg-style speech and be a stoic leader. You need someone who can master the media, because the media is something that's going to control the way that people perceive his presidency. And if he's stoic and he sits back, you know what he's going to get? He's going to be like George W. Bush. George W. Bush was fairly stoic. He was fairly serious. He was fairly serious about the global war on terrorism. And look at the way the news media treated him for it. He never fought back. And Taliu, I don't expect you to understand this, but at that time I was an ardent Republican, and George W. Bush was my guy. And it drove me insane that he never, ever, ever fought back. And what happened? So George Bush did some stupid stuff. He invaded Iraq, which I don't support. But by the end of his term, he had so mortgaged up every last shred of credibility the Republican Party had that we brought in a radical like Barack Obama. And Barack Obama was radical, and he is radical. So Donald Trump looked at George W. Bush and he learned a lesson. And he says, if you don't fight back with the media, if you don't play the media's game and win, you will play the media's game and lose. So you say we need someone who's stoic, someone who doesn't get involved in that. That doesn't work for Republicans. You can be Joe Biden and you can disappear for a week and it doesn't fucking matter, because the media is all going to be in on your side anyway. But with a media that's going to dog you and criticize you and lie about you, you have to give them a stick to chase. And that's exactly what Donald Trump's doing. And the mere fact that it's humorous is fine with me. One could argue that he owns the child if he paid for it. You made that comment at 10:57. So that was half an hour ago. So I don't remember what you were talking about. I've seen a lot of stupid causes in my life, but the cause to attack Sydney Sweeney by American Eagle for the good genes is probably the dumbest one I've ever heard of. We're all really enjoying her reaction, the look on her face, that fuck you look. I'm not playing your stupid games, your gotcha game. I believe that fuck you look speaks for all of us here, except for Taliu. It turns out that one person can run for presidency from prison. Did that happen? When did he go to prison? I'm very worried about your alternate history that you're living from, Taliu, because he never went to prison. But Trump shouldn't be playing a game with the media. Can he use his energy for improving our country? He's doing both. That's the good news. I'm not sure that his speech, all that much time screwing with them but it is a good point. Well, I'm just saying, I mentioned 5 or 6 things that he promised to do: retake Panama, Greenland, make Canada the 51st state. But the point is that chumps and idiots believe that that's going to happen. I was literally watching a video on YouTube the other day where this guy was talking about the election of 1876. I thought I was just watching straight history. I love it. It was the Rutherford Hayes, Samuel Tilden election. One of the most interesting elections in our nation's history. it was more interesting than Bush v. Gore. Okay. You have no idea how interesting this election was. It was more interesting than Trump v. Biden. It was truly a constitutional crisis and truly some Washington backhanded deals. And Rutherford Hayes was an illegitimate president, and he was for 4 years, and it's well documented and well known. Tilden won that election. Okay. So I'm just watching this, but it gets to the end, and then they were talking about how Hayes might have wanted to, that Canada was fortifying the border during the crisis because they were worried that we might take some land in Canada if we had to deal with. No, that was actually, it was during a Civil War documentary by the same guy. They were worried that if the North lost the South in the Civil War, that the United States would try to expand into Canada. And so this historian says, sorry about all that Tilden Hayes stuff, but he says, can you imagine the idea of a president trying to take over Canada? That's laughable, isn't it? And he shows a little picture of Donald Trump, and I'm just like, it is laughable. And you're a chump for thinking that that was ever realistic. And it really ages your video and makes your video look bad because that was the talking point for a week. And that's my point, is that he'll throw these things out here that don't matter, that are not really part of his agenda, and the media eats it up. And people eat it up because they're not critical thinkers, and they don't understand the media cycle, and they don't understand a joke. Blowing up hurricanes with nukes, did you think that was serious? I think if we're not in that position, it would have to be hard not to screw with them. Oh, I would screw with them all the time. You would not, if it was me, you wouldn't believe the stuff that I would say. The media is a joke. I can't believe what they say. It's even mostly factually based anymore. It's all speculation and opinion. Now we agree. Good point. Real question. Why is the donate button page on NPR pathetic? Why? Why is it pathetic? Because they don't offer anything but government propaganda, and they expect you to open up your wallet and pay for that. The mere fact that we're already paying for whatever small portion of their budget is ridiculous, but they're partially government run, government owned, government operated. They offer nothing of value. They're pathetic. You want to talk about stuff being untrue, factual speculation? The bullshit that you hear on NPR is beneath contempt. And just this, like, we're wearing sweaters and drinking coffee, and a certain style of warm media, that they've cultivated. It's such a joke. It's not even human. And it's pathetic, because if they need someone to donate to them, it just shows you that they're little league. And, if they were a real news organization, and if they were anything other than pathetic, they wouldn't need donations. It's very much a poor person holding out a cup there for a $5 bill over to an NPR. I believe the deal with the Space Force is that the Air Force was already focusing on a mission, but due to new technology and increased threat, it spun out to its own branch. Absolutely. Trump shouldn't be worried about spaces being named after him right now. Why not? Why is it up to you to say that he's supposed to be stoic? And why is it up to you to say what he should be worried about? I don't get that. I think he's a brilliant guy. How can you argue with that? I mean, he became president, and then he went through all that gauntlet to stop him from being president, and he's president again. He's clearly outsmarting somebody. He's clearly outsmarting a lot of people, but you're going to say he's not smart enough to be managing two things at once. And not only that, but the whole point of this tally is that he's not worried about it. He doesn't care about that. It's just a stick for you to chase. And you're chasing it. If you're worried about him, well, Trump shouldn't be worried about having his name on a space. If you're thinking about that, don't you realize that you're not thinking about what you're supposed to be thinking about? Played yourself. Trump's father was a slumlord, right? So what does that have to do with anything? And Trump was a failure compared to his father. Okay. Is Trump's dad the next president? Trump has been bailed out so many times. Okay. You know what? I actually respect him more for that. Do you realize? And Trump, and Talio, I think this is the difference between men and women. I truly do. I knew a woman once who criticized a man for his many business failures. He had gone into business as a handyman. He had gone to business as a remodeler. He had attempted to be a manager at a restaurant. He attempted to open his own restaurant. And all of these things were failures. And he said, this man's a failure. And I said, this man's not a failure because he keeps trying. He takes risks. That's what a business person does. And In business, you can only accomplish great things by taking great risks. And you know what? Sometimes you take a risk and it's not going to pay off. But a failure is someone who stops trying. Any man who can make a fortune over and over and over and over again, anyone who can become president twice, it's not a failure. And I don't care about his slumlord daddy. Are we going to go through the daddies of all the presidents? Are you kidding me? Sorry, but that's completely irrelevant to me. My biggest issue with Trump today is the Epstein cover-up. It's problematic. I'm not happy about it. I wonder if Israel are pulling the strings. That's one of my biggest complaints as well. Epstein makes my skin crawl. Well, I got good news for you. He's dead. And I believe there is evidence that Maxwell helped him to get all those young girls is because he saw her own millionaire father do the same thing. Yeah, Ghislaine Maxwell's father was indeed a Mossad agent. Sorry about that microphone problem, guys. All right. Are we done going through all the politics? It's been an hour of politics today, and I have done none of the memes. Canadians are definitely mad at the U.S. Well, I don't care if they're mad. I don't know why you think that we should be stoic and we shouldn't joke and we shouldn't make anyone mad. What is the world to you? Do you not realize that it is a dog-eat-dog competition where anything goes? There are no rules in the world. And there is no such thing as an ally. Not really. You think Israel's our ally that blew up the USS Liberty? Give me a break. How loyal is Canada going to be to us once the United Kingdom fundamentally changes in just 20 years to being a Muslim country? Are they still going to pledge allegiance to the King of England over there? And once United Kingdom's policies become anti-Western, is Canada going to follow suit with Mother England? Or are they going to turn on England and are they going to be friends to us? So a moment of choosing is coming for Canada. And they'll have to choose. And if they don't want to be our friends, I'm okay with that. I don't know where you get this idea that we ought not disturb our neighbors. If our neighbors are fucking us over, or if we need to make the world a better place for democracy, that's what we're going to do. And that's not true. That's not Trump doctrine. Making the world safe for democracy is something that goes back since Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson wasn't afraid to perturb our neighbors, to do what he needed to do to protect our country. Certainly, it's an American tradition. Telling our friends, you realize England was our friend until we told them to get the hell out of here, right? We were under the protection of the British Crown, and lots of people said, we ought not be rude to our neighbors, Great Britain, but they were fucking us over on not giving us representation and taxing us, and really economically screwing us over. You realize that they made it so that we could only trade with them. We could only trade with the United Kingdom. Pre-Revolutionary War. So all of our pelts, our beaver pelts, all of our lumber, our timber, all of our tobacco, all of our goods, all of our exports, all of our corn, it can only go to one place. And because it's only going to one place, they set the prices. So they buy it from us at rock bottom prices, and then they resell it all over the world to pay off their war debts. That's the real reason the Revolutionary War ended. It wasn't because we beat them in a fight. It's because we beat them economically. They were already so indebted because of their wars with France and I presume Spain. They couldn't afford it. It just wasn't worth it to maintain the economic control over the United States of being the sole trading partner for pelts and lumber and whatever else that we were sending to them overseas. So they said, whatever, we'll declare peace. We'll just have regular economic relations with them. But they were our friends until we told them to go to hell. And then we renegotiated a good deal. And now they're our friends again. So sometimes your friend maybe just needs a punch in the mouth. And if Canada needs that at some point, here it comes. Doesn't mean we won't be friends afterwards. I was super duper shocked to see the person who planted the bomb was a Capitol Police officer. How super duper shocking. That was so shocking. Right? How ridiculously shocking was that? Can you believe it? Anyway, I love my Canadian friends. Yes, I wish no specific harm to my Canadian friends. But Trump refused to send out the National Guard. He offered it, and Nancy Pelosi's in charge of the Capitol. I hate to be yelling at you again, Taliu, but you need to do your research because you're just watching CNN. Okay? All of this has been thoroughly debunked. We have had January 6th committee meetings. We have had documents and everything come out. Nancy Pelosi has been confronted about this. It's possible, I hope, that she faces some kind of charges for her role. Okay? Nancy Pelosi is in charge of security. And I already discussed with you what sending out the National Guard would mean, that he was fucked either way. Either he can use the National Guard to quell the riot and look like he's trampling on the First Amendment rights of Americans and establishing a dictatorship, which is exactly what people were afraid of in that moment, right? We're about to transition over. They're declaring, they're certifying the election. That's the day that's happening. That's the significance of the riot, right? So if he sends out the army on that day, the media is going to paint it as, here comes Trump's personal stormtroopers to seize control of the Capitol and to seize control of the country. It doesn't matter that that's ridiculous and that's not what would have happened, but that's how it would have been painted in the news media. So he can't send that out. So it's also not the role of the National Guard to quell that stuff. Okay. Posse Comitatus says that the military is not supposed to get involved in domestic law enforcement. So it's against the law for the military to go out there and do this. Are you aware of the Posse Comitatus Act? Okay. So that's not the role of the National Guard to do. It's the role of the police. It's the role of the Capitol Police. And frankly, if the Capitol Police needed more help, they should have been getting help from Virginia, from Maryland, mutual aid from nearby civilian agencies. But they did not do this. But Capitol Police, who's ultimately in charge of the Capitol Police Department? Nancy Pelosi. But she knew that by laying down and letting these guys come inside, that she could manufacture a crisis that she could later put on Trump, which he had no way of getting out of or avoiding. Otherwise, he would have gotten out of it or avoided it. This has all been debunked. You are operating very I cannot catch a break with this thing. I can't catch a break. I talked about this before, right? When I talked about the White House renovation, we have got to stop treating the Capitol and the White House like these are the temples of our God, the government. Okay. It's the fucking Capitol, and our congressmen work there, and our congressmen don't do their fucking job. So I don't care about going in and taking a big shit on their desks. I don't give a shit about that. That can happen anytime for any reason. That's just being an American. Okay. But treating it like it's some sort of sacrosanct temple to our God, the government, is ridiculous. It's just a government building. The U.S. Capitol, although historic and although architecturally impressive, is not any different in its functioning from your local Social Security agency. I'm an absolute idiot, dude. Trump is the most obvious common in American history. Well, thank you for that well backed up comment. Ryan, go ahead and get your own podcast, and then I'll watch it, and then I'll let you know what I think of you. It's technically our desks. We pooped our own desks. But does the public have the right to access all the sensitive information? Maybe we do. Maybe we do have the right to a government by the people, for the people. And is that what happened? Did anyone access any sensitive information? You're asking if we had the right to do something that never happened. Well, why don't we speculate it after it actually happened? So many undercover police officers in the crowd. It was obviously orchestrated. I'd posit that many of these bad actors were probably some of the undercover officers and assets. I can't effectively argue, but I know you can't. It's not fair. You don't have a microphone. I know. I always kind of run you down. I appreciate you making these points. You make the show better, Talia, because you get me animated. You give me something to talk about, and you tee it up so that some random guy, Ryan Nelson, can come here and call me an idiot. So you got some backup. I mean, he didn't make a fucking point at all, other than to say that Trump is the most common con man, obvious con man. Okay. You don't think Nixon's a con man? You don't think Clinton's a con man? You don't think Bush is a con man? You don't think Cheney was a con man? Okay. And isn't the point of the whole episode is that he's kind of a con man? I believe it is. I mean, I was saying that he was making up all this stuff for all the people who hate him to just get upset about and chase around, right? Like, that's the whole point of the episode, is that he's outwitting a bunch of dumb people who hate him. You could call that a con man. You could just call him, I mean, he's outwitting you. So, in my opinion, they absolutely should totally. Anything really secret would be sci-fi. Yes. I would love to know about like the UFOs and shit. That's what I want to know about. I don't think that's in the Capitol, though. Jesus himself could not convince me that the 2020 election was not stolen. Yeah, I know. Biden just all of a sudden found millions of votes at 3 a.m. You know what? There needs to be a federal law passed that would deal with this. Election day is one day. At midnight, it's over. And if you're fucking Arizona and you can't get your poop in a group, then whatever you got by midnight is what you got by midnight. But election day is one day. Make it a federal holiday. Just give everyone the day off, except me, obviously. Go out there and vote. There's no excuse. Go out there and do it. You don't have to work, whatever. Go out there and get it done. But at midnight, the counting is over because election day is over. Federally, it's just one day. Why are we counting ballots month after month after month? When you were a kid, this wasn't even a problematic thing. Remember Bush? Remember Clinton? Remember all these people who just, it would be, 10, 11 p.m. and it would be over with. We have computers now, and now it's harder. That's exactly my point. I don't know all these details, and frankly, you want to believe anybody all this stuff. Okay. Well, okay. You're an inquisitive person. You're naturally curious. You're intelligent. You have these things going for you. But you're going to a single source. And I don't mean CNN specifically or MSNBC specifically, but you're going to the mainstream media. And I'm telling you that these things have been debunked. Do you honestly believe that if Trump was guilty of inciting the riot, and they had 4 years to make the case stick, that he should not have been president? Do you think if any of that was true, he would be the president? They tried their asses off. Here's the other thing. People say that Trump's on the Epstein list, and that's why it's not coming out now. Trump was on the Epstein list. That would have been revealed during Joe Biden's presidency. You have to remember that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were prosecuted, or they were apprehended. The case was prosecuted by Trump's FBI. Trump's the one that brought an end to the Epstein Island. They were arrested in July of 2020. All during the Biden years, the Biden administration, the Biden FBI had access to all of those documents that are now missing or whatever. And if Trump was on them during the time when they're trying to pin the January 6th riot on him, that they're trying to get him for all these felonies in New York, that they're trying to get him for this, that, and the other thing, they know that if they said Trump is a client of the Epstein Island, and here's the photographs, and here's the proof, and here's the documents, nothing would have destroyed his own base faster than that. You want to destroy Donald Trump? That would have been the nuclear option, and it was never an option. And we're talking about a party that made things up. The Steele dossier, all this stuff about, the Russians and pissing and all this, that was all made up and financed, frankly, by the Hillary Clinton campaign, for which she has never been held responsible. All of this had been debunked. It's all true. So they made up shit and couldn't get him with the stuff they made up. Why wouldn't they use something that was real? Word quagmire is a good word. I admittedly don't know all these details. All right. It's okay. You make the show better. You make me better. I'm exhausted. You win. It's not about winning. I don't want to win. I don't want to win. I get that I am exhausting, though. Is Trump smart, or are we stupid? Trump is smart, and some of us are stupid, but not all of us are. Yeah, he's outsmarting all the people who voted for him. He's outsmarting for all the people who voted against him, too. The United Kingdom is Western. What are you talking about? I don't know. Watch the news over there, my man. Watch the news. In 20 years, it will not be Western anymore. Trump is commander-in-chief. That's true. Of the military, this guy is just coping so hard, or am I copying so hard? It's nice to see weird random people here. It's nice. Glad that you're here. In his term, he has had the authority to call in the guard. Okay, that's true. but it's not the role of the National Guard to quell disturbances, is it? I mean, it's been done historically. Everyone knows Nancy Pelosi is the commander-in-chief of the military in D.C. No, she's in charge of the Capitol Police. Okay, so again, random aside there. So what is Posse Comitatus now in 2025 with the Guard being deployed? Is that a question? They're all common, so we should support another common. The only people he is outwitting are his own supporters. He outwitted you because he's president again. All the people that tried to defeat him, he outwitted them. For 4 years, they tried to stop him from becoming president. You don't think that he outwitted them? Every decade, we swing back and forth between parties. They divide us with social issues and then get richer. Andrew, you are 100% right. You are 100% right. And you're getting closer with this one. And I'm glad you said that because I'm being perceived right now as a big Trump apologist or a big MAGA guy. I'm actually not. I don't like the government at all. I would be okay with not having a president at all for 4 years. You know, the presidency historically didn't used to be so important before Lincoln. I believe we could get by without one. But you are absolutely right, Andrew. And I knew this the moment I saw George Bush and Hillary Clinton chumming it up at Trump's first inauguration, because we had just gotten done with all of the 90s, Bush versus Clinton, the 2000s, Bush versus Clinton, Obama, Hillary was part of his administration. So it kind of felt like that same political fight between the Bushes and the Clintons and their associates, right? And that stemmed out of Reagan. And I see George W. Bush and Hillary Clinton yucking it up, absolutely laughing and having a good time together. And I realized, we've been played for chumps for 8 years, for 16 years, 20 years, 24 years. I have said before that they absolutely want you and me to hate each other, whoever that is. They want me and Taliu to hate each other, you and me and Andrew, some of the other people that are here this morning that aren't usually here. They want you and me to hate each other, to fight each other, to name call each other. And they want us so concerned with each other, hating each other, and frankly, fearing each other. We're so worried about our neighbors that we're not looking at the people who are above us. You are 100% right. And it doesn't matter if it's Trump, and it doesn't matter if it's Biden, and it doesn't matter if it's Obama or Bush or Clinton. It's the same forces of the status quo that keep those people powerful and keep us not in power. I don't believe this country's had a real president since John F. Kennedy. He was the one who was telling the deep state to go to hell, telling generals that he wasn't going to invade Cuba and all this, that he had his own policy on how he was going to deal with the Cold War. And we know what happened to John F. Kennedy. That's my belief. So that was the last time we had a president that stood up to the big machine, the military industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about. And that's what happened. And then when I see Trump not releasing these Epstein files, I wonder. When I see Kash Patel talking about how important it is to support Israel, I wonder who's pulling our strings here. We know that there's a tremendous amount of foreign influence, tremendous amount of money coming in from foreign interests. Okay. So is that what's pulling the strings of the Trump administration? But you're almost here with this. And you are so close. And I want to add to this. I want to make your idea more complex, Andrew. The divide isn't left versus right. It's have and have not. I would say that as far as politics, it's not divide left and right. I would say it's the divide between big and small. Do you want a big and small government? You can't be a conservative and like Donald Trump, because he's making the government bigger. He's spending more. These are not conservative ideals. Okay. So that's why I'm not a big Trump guy, because I would prefer the federal government to shrink. And that's why I've had no problem with it being turned off. But the most important point that you made, and this is half brilliant, and I'm going to take us all the way to brilliant. Together, I'm going to do it with you. Have versus have nots. This is so close. Here's what it really might be, Andrew, and I want you to think about this. I think it's the haves versus the have slightly less, because the have-nots have no power. You and I have no power to change anything. It doesn't matter if we go out and vote. There's an electoral college. There's all this in place that really prevents all of it from being meaningful. Okay. I'm pro-electoral college, don't get me wrong. But you have a certain caste of people in society. Let's call them the absolute elites. They're the people at the very top. Okay. We can talk about Donald Trump. We can talk about Elon Musk. We can talk about Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates. Just go ahead and cluster George Soros. Go ahead and cluster in your top 20 most powerful political people, powerful rich people. Okay, we're going to call those the ultimate elites. Now we're going to look at the next layer down, the next strata down. Okay, so it's they still have, but they don't have as much as the most have. Okay, so we have the elite at the top. Our next layer is the sub-elite. The sub-elite will do anything that they have to do to become elite. They want to be on that absolute top tier. So the sub-elite will sell out their entire country. They'll sell out the interests of their entire country. They'll do whatever they have to do to get to the very, very top. That is exactly what's going on in Great Britain. You have mass migration, people being brought in to secure a power base, electorally speaking, a voting bloc, in order to secure their power. The people in Great Britain, the movers and shakers in Great Britain, who are allowing, without the consent of the people, a mass migration of people from Africa and the Middle East and elsewhere, are securing for themselves a voting base and voting power based off of these immigrants, to the point where the people of Great Britain very, very quickly, within a generation, will lose any meaningful political power that they have left. They will not have the ability to stop Sharia law from becoming the law of the land. They will not have any power to stop morning call to prayer. Hell, we've already got that in Minneapolis, right? Their entire culture is being supplanted and replaced with an incompatible culture. It's being replaced by a culture that hates gay people. It's being hated by a culture that hates women. It's being replaced by a conservative, tyrannical, religious government and way of living that is not compatible with England, Britain, the United Kingdom, or the West. But there are people in the United Kingdom who are fine with this because they are sub-elite. They want to get to the very top of power, so they will sell out their entire country and all of their countrymen and all of their values and the safety of their wives and their daughters in order to cement this voting bloc. And if you think it's not true, I did an episode just last week about multiple people, women, children, who have been sexually assaulted by migrants, who have faced not being deported, who have faced 1 year in prison. And meanwhile, United Kingdom born and bred, in other words, white people, have gone out to protest these egregious abominations of justice. And although they did get too rowdy, they went to prison even longer. There was 3 protesters in a place called Epping. It's in Essex. It's just outside of London. They were protesters. They were protesting outside of this hotel where these asylum seekers are being sent and kept. There's a guy that sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl. He got off a boat from Lebanon, came ashore, assaulted a girl, attempted to assault someone else. Judge gave him 1 year in prison. They went out and rioted this absolute abomination of justice, and each of them received more than a year in prison, and one of them received 2 years. This is an example of how the sub-elites, by allowing the total breakdown of law and order in the West and traditional values like rape not being okay, they sell out the peace, safety, security, justice, and the culture of the West so that the sub-elites can develop enough power to become elite. So it's about those who have the most and who have the next most. And that is playing out in this country as well. Thank you, Andrew, for your comment. Can I just do the funny memes now? The show is actually partially funny memes. It's supposed to be funny memes. I cannot recall a respectable figure at president. Yeah, they all let you down. That's why I don't get like Trump t-shirts and stuff. Like, I like some of the stuff that Trump's doing, but I know ultimately I'm going to be blackpilled by this guy. And in 8 years, in 12 years, I'm going to be like, oh man, what a thing that was. That's because that's how I feel about Bush. I was all in on Bush. I donated to Romney's campaign. You think that's not my greatest shame and embarrassment? Fuck. Anyway, so for those of you who don't know, those of you who are watching for political reasons, and then like for some reason you think that I'm an idiot and you're still watching. I don't understand that. The show is actually also just funny memes, which I will now get to. Can you explain this 5-year gap on your resume? I was disc golfing. Really? Yeah, I was just literally out there banging every chain I could. That's dope as hell. So I just spent my vacation. I was out disc golfing all the time. I did lose a disc. Vote no on everything. We don't need it. We can't afford it. That's how I felt with Doge. Doge essentially went out and found $20 in the couch, and then Trump's like, "Okay, well, we're going to go out and spend. We're going to go buy a yacht now. We're going to buy a cruise ship." And Elon Musk is like, "This can't be fixed." This one's a little dated. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Commenting on Mondami. That one must be held over from last week. And then these people, I'm so angry I made a sign. That one's kind of an older one too. But I like that one. I also like the ones that say, I'm just here for the violence. This would do it for me. Mass deportations. Trump also, the thing that he did, I think it was today or yesterday. So the point of this episode, in case you missed it, is that Trump throws all these things out, these sticks for the media and for stupid people to chase while he does whatever it is that he's actually doing. He distracts people. As that he was talking about 50-year mortgages, how like that's a way to solve the housing crisis is by, well, houses are expensive, interest rates are too high, the market's kind of fucked right now, and we're the only way to reset it is through a painful recession. Well, to avoid that, we'll just switch to 50-year mortgages. We'll just enslave you to debt your entire life. You won't even pay off your mortgage before you die. You know what would solve the housing crisis, Mr. Trump? If we got rid of 50 million people who weren't even supposed to be here, all of a sudden their houses would be vacant. And if you just know supply and demand, if your supply goes up and your demand remains the same, then all of a sudden you will have places to live. This is what I will need after the show. Nice ibuprofen flavored Lay's potato chip. And now that it is dark outside, now that the morning people have won, we've returned to standard time. Just work and sleep is all we do. Top 5 things I'm going to do when I'm rich. Just because, we criticize the rich people here, but just to let you know that, that's what I would do. I'm going to let the money change me, switching it up on day one. I'm going to forget where I came from. I'm going to ignore my loved ones, which I already do. I'm going to ignore the injustice in the system. Here's my my thing. I remarked upon this. This is my Facebook post from 2016. This is the day after the election. How long until the media and the left stop saying we need to be open-minded about Trump and start giving him the W treatment, saying his election is illegitimate because of the antiquated electoral college, and start 4 years of making him out to be a moron? Did I call it or what? I wish I could have called the pandemic. I would have, if only I had known the lengths that they would go to. Here's a guy that owns a company where people can anonymously complain about their boss, and he'll show up at their workplace and curse them out on their behalf. I would love to both do this. And, I like my boss. I don't need anyone to curse him out, but I've had bosses in the past that I would have absolutely loved to do this for. That seems like a great business to me. Revenge for hire. After hibernation, bears reacclimate to the wild through a healthy diet and knife fights. That is how I will be reacclimating back to the environment. You guys heard of the Happy Meal? Get ready for Sad Witch. She's taking it rather tough. She's taking it hard there, the Sad Witch. I am ready for a Sad Witch. I'm tired of being happy. These motherfuckers be like, why does my stomach hurt so much? My brother in Christ, you vaped and had iced coffee for breakfast with milk in it. Here's what I suffered the past week. You get 1 extra hour of sleep, you lose the will to live after 4 p.m. I could not believe it. I could not believe how much it affected me this year. As I said in years past at the start of the show, that it didn't affect me because I'm just inside at 4 p.m. So what does it matter if the sun's high or low in the sky? I'm at work. Well, this year I just spent 9 unbridled days watching it. We need a slur for people who chat GPT everything. Yes, we need a slur for me. Whoops. This is going to pass, but it will also linger. The great biblical wisdom that this too shall pass. But it seems like things also linger in our lives, don't they? Do they linger because events actually linger, or do they linger because we just don't get over things? We've made flashlights, but we haven't made reverse flashlights. Artificial darkness would be funny as hell. I'd love to beam a line of night directly to someone's face. Go to the void. It would actually be an incredible weapon. It would be a blindness ray, essentially. If you could shoot darkness at people, it's a blinding ray. I would love that in corrections. You're going to do a cell entry in a prison, going to go in and get an inmate, blind him first. You don't have to blind him painfully with OC. Just shoot the blindness ray in his eyes. If you think about it, a ray that could stop light, though, would also stop like electromagnetic transmission. So like it would also stop radio, cell phone, all this. If it can keep out photons, if it can keep out light, it blocks the electromagnetic spectrum itself. I mean, the weapon, the electronic warfare implications are staggering. But also, like, if it could stop radiation, like, then you could really use it for a lot of safety things too. So we got to invent the darkness ray as soon as we could get on that. Birds are just name stuff like hot-breasted MILF. And no one does anything about it. Yeah, I already did that one. You people don't season your food. With apparently Mrs. Dash and Dawn, I guess. Sorry, we've been busy creating cars, airplanes, rockets, running water, the Colosseum, and great works of art. Yeah, you've been seasoning your food. Oh, we've been in a century. We went from building a glider, two bicycle repair guys building a glider to walking on the moon. But it's okay. Pouring one out for Dick Cheney. I've seen several waterboarding memes this week. Remember, if you're not a hamburger helper, you're a hamburger hindrance. That's right. One of the most crass jokes I ever heard about hamburger helper, I think this was on Conan, but it was something like the hamburger helper helping hand. The only thing the hamburger helper helping hand ever helped hamburger do was masturbate. That doesn't sound like me. Perfect society. Everybody's all mixed together. We all need to get along no matter how different we are. All breakup songs can be about your family if you're damaged enough. It's for sure true. While driving, my astigmatism shows me the light of angels in every street lamp and headlight. So you see the red brake lights ahead of you, but the devil remains nearby. Starts to speed up. I am the sword of God. Smash. Nothing will fuck you up more than the realization that there's no real reason the alphabet needs to be in order. What have you done? That's right. As I said earlier, Tally, there are no rules. Everything's made up. The idea that Canada's your friend is just it's a made up idea. It's not necessarily true. It's all fake, even alphabetical order. Sometimes I'm like, why am I irrationally angry? And then I'm like, oh, right, there's an overhead light on. This actually bothers me a lot. The lights in my house are too bright. I need to swap those out with like appliance bulbs so that I'm not angry all the time. And any day shift at work, for some reason, the day shift people feel they need to keep the lights on, and it gives me a splitting headache and makes me fucking irritable the entire shift. What are you going to do? Time traveler from the 50s. What's the future like? Bro, get the fuck back. Get the fuck back in your machine. Get out of here as fast as you can. Yeah, I want to go back in time to 1955 and just live. When I see somebody I know and I have to hide and wait until they leave. This is me at the grocery store running into somebody. I think I'll just duck down this aisle. And I don't even shop. I just watch them and like make sure they're gone before I can continue shopping. Damn, some bitch just fell down the stairs in my complex and I went to check on her and all, and she was like, no, I deserve this. Sounds like me. I deserve to fall down a flight of stairs. Look at this girl. She She's got that cute librarian, possibly slightly liberal type. Imagine getting popped by a cutie patootie. I'm all about it. I have said this before, and I will say this again, and I will say it 100 times. There is nothing sexier than a woman with a gun. And this girl may be underage. I don't know. So I'm going to withdraw any specific commentary about her. Nice tulip shirt, I guess, maybe. U.S. politicians. You'd be pretty sad if you woke up tomorrow morning and you didn't have a federal government. No, I wouldn't. Libertarians. And say it again. Maybe it'll happen. I hope I never see any of you jerks again. He wakes up in the morning. I made my government disappear. And it would play out just like in that movie. You make your government disappear. All of a sudden, you're watching movies you're not allowed to watch. You're eating food you're not allowed to eat. Your schedule is completely free. Go wherever you want to go. And you don't answer the door when cops knock. Have I ever found out a mouse lived in my home and he had a small archway in the wall, and he lived in there with small, real furniture, and he ventured out nightly to get an olive or a small wedge of cheese? I would stop at nothing to end his life. I would spare no expense. I am so stupid, genuinely illiterate. I'm sure that if there's anyone still hanging around from when I was talking about Trump, those people who were just getting in my comments to insult me, not make a single argument in their favor, but insult me. I am genuinely illiterate. I am the dumbest bitch alive. You're stupid. Einstein wants what I have. By the way, you've probably seen this in a meme. Like someone who's like trying to go to sleep at night, but then they see this and then they're obviously going to be awake for at least 16 more minutes. I watched this video, Alternate History Hub. That was literally the channel I was mentioning earlier, talking about the Civil War, talking about, I don't think it was the same channel talking about Tilden and Hayes, but this is a real video and it absolutely is worth watching. And let me ask you this. What if I told you that if Big Bird was on the Space Shuttle Challenger, it never would have exploded? Would you believe me? It's true. Ever since I was young, I wanted to check my email for a verification code. Anybody else out there really loving this life of making sure you get an email and check all the boxes that have bridges in them and all this? It's fun. I'm going to do a deep callback to the 90s. You guys remember John Rocker? Maybe it was in the 2000s, 2000. 25 years ago, I criticized New York for its rapid decline into a third world country. I was forced to undergo psychological counseling as if I were the crazy one. 25 years later, the city is voting in a Muslim socialist for mayor. Fuck New York. John Rocker has been vindicated. Took 25 years, but he was right. He stood correct. Law & Order SVU is like, this episode does not depict any actual person or event. Anyway, here's the tragic young pageant star, John DeLay Ramby. Ripped from the headlines. It's funny how you just say like this doesn't depict any actual real person or event. You can't be sued. I should just say put that at the beginning of the show. Girls are so pretty. I wish they were good people. Ah, man, you can't have it all. You could either have pretty girls or they could be good people. So that's it. I need to get laid to rest, motherfucker. Put me out of my misery. This just gets put in every week now, as you all know. The word retard is not meant for people with handicaps. It is meant for non-handicapped people who are stupid. And if you do not understand this, you're a retard. Just putting that in there as a reminder. Guys, here's me. Here's what you see. You just see failure, right? Donald Trump, you see his failures. But what you really don't see are his massive failures. Even the whales see it. Wearing shorts is so embarrassing. Like, here are my legs, I guess. Jesus Christ. When I went down to see Drew in Florida, I went down there in September. And we went to Raymond James Stadium, and it was hot as balls. They did not have the air conditioning on in the stadium, which I guess makes sense. I can't imagine how much it costs to air condition a whole fucking football stadium. But he wore shorts every day, and like that was normal for him. And like I obviously live way up north, and so like I never, ever, ever wear shorts except to like the gym. Because even though I think I have good legs, I guess, I feel appropriately ashamed of my legs. But Drew's just like, whatever, I'm going to wear shorts. And he wore shorts every day. And I'm just like, well, here are my legs, I guess. Jesus Christ. Try the new blue raspberry slushy. Looks good. Looks like something that might even be on the verge of being in my diet. Take off one of those buns, it'll be in there. Aaron Rodgers last night, every time the camera pans to him after a play, did not have a good night against the Los Angeles Chargers. It's a bad night. Maybe the end of Aaron Rodgers yet. What's new? Nothing. I'm at Dave and Buster's. Oh, okay, I don't know them. I'm going to bed. don't invite me out. That's the end of the show. This is the longest show I've done in recent memory. That's because I got into a big argument to try to change Taliu's mind, I guess, which I don't even really care about doing. I'm glad you don't hate me since you keep coming back. I hope, Taliu, I hope. I know I say this every week. I'm like, we're like in an abusive relationship where I beat you up and then I apologize and then I love bomb you, which is a huge warning sign of a toxic relationship. We both want the president to be a respectable figurehead. We both agree. Actually, I agree with you that I would like the president to be a statesman. Marvin Haymeyer said it best. In unreasonable times, sometimes a man has to do unreasonable things. I think he's the Marvin Haymeyer of presidents. I think he's armored up a bulldozer and is being a president instead of an armored bulldozer. Because we just got to that point as a country. I would love for Calvin Coolidge or Thomas Jefferson to be the president again. Or Kennedy even. I'm sure I don't even agree with Kennedy on everything, but he was a statesman. The president will never make anyone will not make everyone happy. I believe Lincoln said that. He said you can't make everyone happy all the time. And we all love Lincoln. You guys remember Lincoln was hated so much that when he was elected president, the South said, "Fuck it, I'm out. He's not our president." You have people saying, "I'm not our president," Donald Trump. Lincoln, when he was elected president, they said, "Not our president," and they meant it. They literally elected their own president. So Lincoln was hated at his time. He was assassinated at his time. Jefferson Davis was their president. Remember that. All right. I miss the days of the Ron Paul Revolution. I miss it too. I saw him once. He was at a debate in Iowa, and Ron Paul made a lot of sense to me. Getting back on the gold standard is the only thing that will save us, Andrew. I hope you come back for more. I'm not normally this political. Normally, I like to just have a good time, but frankly, my political videos get a little bit more traction. My last video that had a lot of views was about how not Three Kings Day. No King's Day was fake, made up, and also designed to help them get the election done this past Tuesday. Jenny, to what? I don't know. Remember, you must say what it is you're ewing to. I'm sick of North Carolina trying to take credit for the Wright brothers. Ohio raised them and nourished them. NC just supplied them some wind and dune. You know what? You're winning that argument, though, because when I was a kid, the license plates in North Carolina used to say "first in flight." They had the Wright brothers plane on it, and they all said "first in flight." And I believe that it had been that way forever. And then I was recently in North Carolina, and now they say "first in freedom." Like they subtly switched it so no one noticed. So I think they're like somebody like you actually told them to stop appropriating flight, even though it happened at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Whatever. They were from Ohio, but everyone was back then. So I embody the shorts meme. Jonathan, and you rush through the memes. That's because I have to go to the gym. I have things I have to do today. Surprising number of people were long plants in Florida, I guess. Me, I was one of them. JFK made Marilyn Monroe happy until he didn't. Yes, and other people. If Trump was standing right in front of me, I would still be respectful. I bet he would be respectful to you too. That's the thing, is that a lot of people say that he's very, very personable and very kind, but that's not his reputation. Ew to the breakup songs about being about your family. I don't know. It wasn't that serious. John, you never said hi to me, and I need to know to take 5 seconds to acknowledge my presence. To Lauren S. What's up, my guy? Good to see you. Thanks again for the $10 you Venmo'd me recently. Always appreciate that. Still have it in my Venmo, so I didn't really cash it out or use it to buy coffee or anything, but hey, You're literally the only guy who's ever given me a tip on this channel. So thank you to you. I appreciate you, Lauren. I hope all your dreams come true except one, so that you always have something to strive for, and that all these bass are yours. I don't know what else to say. Have a great day. Ohio bought out a new license plate design recently with a red flare on it, pulling a banner, flying backwards. When I was in Virginia, they have the best license plates there. They're the Gadsden flag, say, don't tread on me license plates. Obviously, I wish we had those in my state, but then I'm like, well, more than one state can't have those because then they would look the same. But then I'm guessing that the don't tread on me license plates are probably a specialized plate that's more expensive, that you have to give even more money to the government for to get those plates. So every single person that has a Gadsden flag plate, don't tread on me yellow plate in Virginia, is a chump. They get you no matter what. Made me so happy that the gym is something you have to do. I'm proud of you and your habits. Yes. Oh, hey, John, my brother, how are you? I'm okay, but only okay. Show's verging on 2 hours. Thanks to all my haters who showed up and validated every single thing I had to say. If it was important enough for you to drop some hate on it, what can I say? I stand correct. And we will catch you back here next week. I don't normally end the show with that, but I just wanted to drop that on you. This week, we're doing an exciting episode of Com Center on Thursday night for the Com Center fans. I think you're going to like it. It's going to be totally different than anything we've ever done before. It's going to be funny. We're planning on having a special guest that you all love and know, and I think it's going to be fun. So we will see you on Thursday. Thanks for everybody that was here today, especially new people. I hope you come back to hurl insults at me and attempt to undermine me through your utter lack of any presence of coherent ideas. And I will be here to yell at you. And also special thanks for Taliu. Thanks for being, for surviving podcast abuse. Everybody have a great week.